Over the past month or so with setting up our CVP common room, I've had to learn a lot about streaming and all the different pieces of kit that you need to get things up and running. However, one thing that I, as well as many others, have run into was not being able to get hold of anything to get my camera's HDMI feed into my computer. Products like the Blackmagic Web Presenter and Elgato Camlink 4K have become increasingly difficult to get hold of, but there are other options on the market available. One of these options may even be in your camera bag already. Did you know that the Z CAM E2 series can connect to your computer over IP? Well, it can. And this little camera, the E2C, could be the perfect streamer's camera. So let's take a look at the Z CAM E2C and why it may be the best bang for buck streaming camera you can buy. Off the bat, this camera is a great size to use as a high quality webcam and only weighs 668 grams, so mounting the camera on your desk using some kind of clamp like the Elgato multi-mount is very easy. You also have 1/4" threads absolutely everywhere, which again makes mounting it very easy no matter what angle you want to shoot at. On the front you have a taillight as well as an MFT mount, which houses the E2C's 4/3 inch or 17.56 by 13.11mm sensor. This is a different sensor than the regular E2s, as it is a little smaller, which means you have a crop factor of around 2 when compared to full frame. However, because of the MFT mount, we have the ability to use some awesome wide angle lenses or use either the XL or Ultra Metabone speed booster, so we can use EF lenses and get some field of view and light back. I've been using it with the Meiki 12mm, which is roughly a 28mm equivalent, and the 11-16 with an Ultra speed booster. So even though this isn't full frame, with a speed booster or other focal reducer, you can get a very similar look. Or if you want a small and compact setup, you can go with native MFT lenses. The back has a range of I/O that are more minimal than the rest of the Z CAM E2 series, but still feature rich. The most obvious thing to notice straight off the bat is the battery mount. This camera is powered off of Canon LP6 batteries. Battery life is pretty decent. From my testing, I got around an hour and a half from a single LP6 when shooting in 4K 30p. However, if you're powering this for streaming, I would suggest either using an LP6 dummy battery to DC or by using the included 2-pin LEMO to DTAP to DC cable to power it via mains. Next, you have a HDMI port which can output 4K up to 30p. You have an antenna port where you can attach the included antenna for the built-in Wi-Fi. With the Wi-Fi, you can install the Z CAM app on your iOS or Android device and get a live feed out of the camera, control the camera, and even stream. You have a USB-C port which can either be used to control the camera with a phone or to record externally, which with this camera allows you to record ProRes or Z-RAW externally, which is awesome. Just make sure you connect a fast enough SSD to not run into any issues. You then have an industry standard 2-pin LEMO port which you can use to power the camera. The camera comes with a 2-pin LEMO to DTAP cable and a DTAP to DC cable, so you can use a pretty generic barrel connector to power the camera. You then have a remote port for controlling the camera over the LAN, and last and most importantly, the 1GB Ethernet port. This port is the reason this camera is so interesting for streamers. Not only can you output your image via Ethernet, but you can also control it, which we'll get into a bit later. You can also power the camera over Ethernet with Cat5e cables. On the top of the camera, you have buttons for controlling the camera and settings. A preview screen, which you can use to control the camera and navigate its menu system. However, this is small, so I would suggest getting some kind of monitor to use instead. The Portkeys P6 is a fantastic budget option, but if you've got the money, I would suggest getting the Atomos Ninja 5, as Z CAM will be updating their cameras to output ProRes RAW over HDMI, and Atomos will be creating a user interface for controlling the camera, which is awesome. You have a nice big record button. On this side, you have the SD card slot and 4 function buttons which you can define the function of. On the left, you have a mic in as well as a headphone out for monitoring. Internally, you can record either H.265 or H.264. H.265 is 10-bit, H.264 is 8-bit. You can shoot up to 4K 30 or 1080p 60 directly to SD cards. However, you can also record ProRes and Z-RAW externally via the USB-C output. This is perfect if you have this set up as a streaming camera, as it means you can have a USB-C cable running down to an SSD, record ProRes, which is going to behave much nicer in your NLE than the internal codecs, and then you can plug the same SSD into your computer for use it either ingest or edit directly from, all without moving the camera. Z-RAW is Z CAM's own RAW codec. Currently, you have to use their own software to process and then export these files, which isn't perfect. However, Z CAM are working on getting a Premiere Pro plugin working so you can edit, import and process these raw files in Premiere. Currently, I would say shooting ProRes is still plenty good enough for YouTube content creation, and I would only shoot with the internal H.264 or 265 if you are really low on storage. Otherwise, ProRes is better to edit with and has much more detail and room in post to push it about. So let's take a look at what software surrounds the Z CAM series and what makes it so unique. Let's start with getting the camera feed into your computer without needing a capture card or other capture device. There are two ways you can connect to your computer via Ethernet. You can either plug the camera directly into your computer, which you can do via the Ethernet on your motherboard or a USB to Ethernet adapter, or you can plug it into a router or switch. For this demonstration, we'll be using a switch. Depending on how you do it, depends on what ETH mode you need to be in. ETH mode or Ethernet mode allows you to change between several modes. Router is for when you're using a router or switch and the camera will let the router assign it an IP address. Direct is when you're connecting the camera directly to your computer and the camera will generate its own IP. The default IP address is 10.98.32.1. And lastly, you have static. With this, you have to contact Z CAM directly so they can allow you to set the IP in your config file. You can also see your Ethernet IP address here when you're connected, which you will need to see later. Once you have, you'll need to download and install Z CAM Stream Converter. Once you download the exe and run it, it will now start running down in the toolbar. To get it ready for streaming, head over to there, right click on the logo. This will allow you to change a couple of things, showing you the cameras on your network and allowing you to change between either a virtual camera mode or NDI. However, if you can't see your camera, you need to open up the full program and add the IP of your camera. When you double click the logo, the full program will open up.
You can add new cameras, so if you have multiple set up, all you've got to do is just type your IP into the new IP bar and then hit add camera, and it will add whatever camera you're adding on whatever IP it is. So within Stream Converter as well, you can obviously adjust all the camera settings you could want, so you can adjust your white balance, your tint, what aperture you're at, everything you'd need on the fly to adjust, for different lighting conditions. You also have Z CAM's controller software, which is more dedicated for controlling the full camera menu system, which is very similar to the phone app. In here, you can't toggle whether or not you're going to stream or not, but if you're just looking to control your camera, this is a fantastic way of doing it as well. Within Stream Converter, you can also preview your image. So you just do that by hitting Start Preview, and then the Start button underneath it and the Stop button underneath it are just your way of starting and stopping the stream feed from your camera.
You can then open up your stream program of choice. For this example, we are using OBS. In OBS, you just need to add a new video to capture device, select the Z CAM, and you can then configure your stream as you normally would. Being able to use the entire E2 family to stream this simply is awesome, and given their $799 price point, this may be an attractive option for a streamer wanting to up their image quality from a webcam, especially with the camera's stellar image, small form factor, and how easy they are to control. You've got a fantastic streaming camera. The E2C may be the best option for a lot of streamers, as it doesn't feature the more cine-orientated features or high frame rate options of the flagship series, but still features the same incredible streaming performance with the ability to be powered via LP6, 2-pin LEMO, or even over Ethernet. And you can get all of that for just under $800. But if you want a better sensor and more frame rate options, you should check out the rest of the Z CAM E2 family. They have the E2, which is another Micro Four Thirds sensor camera, but can shoot up to 4K 160 frames a second. The S6, which is a Super 35 6K sensor, the F6, which is a full frame 6K sensor, and the F8, which has a full frame 8K sensor. With it in OBS, you can now use this with most programs that recognize virtual cameras. So for example, Discord, Skype, Google Hangouts, and even Zoom. The way to do this is by installing the OBS Virtual Cam plugin. You can find the link for the guide in the description below, but simply download the exe from the GitHub release, run the exe, accept the agreement, hit next, click yes, install, and open up OBS. The Virtual Cam plugin should now be installed under your Tools tab. Hit Virtual Cam, tick Auto Start, keep aspect ratio, select OBS camera, and put your buffered frames to 0. You will now be able to pick OBS camera in any of these programs. You can now either scale your camera feed to the entire output canvas or anything else you'd like to do within OBS. This makes the camera incredibly versatile no matter how you want to use it. Let us know how you would use it by joining in on the conversation on our Discord, links down below.
There have been 2 new additions in terms of software since I started writing this video. So the first one is an OBS SSP plugin. So this plugin allows your Z CAM to communicate with your computer using an SSP protocol. So this is currently in beta, but the next version will have an installer. Currently, you can download a zip for either Mac or Windows and install it into your OBS folder like I have here. And when you open up OBS, you'll be able to add a source, and in there you'll see Z CAM SSP. You then type in the IP, either the IP that your camera's set to if you're doing over Ethernet, or the default one for the USB, because you can do this over USB as well, which is awesome. You can then tweak latency, and then boom. This is a test of the latency. It's not too bad. And the second one is the ability to plug the camera in via USB and then control it in your browser, and also get it into OBS over USB as well. So you plug it in via the USB-C into your computer, go into browser, type in this address, and then you can control and connect your camera to your computer that way as well, which is awesome. However, I think the IP-based way is going to be nicer for a lot of people.
However, there is one drawback with the Z CAM E2 series, and that is the autofocus. But for most, the AF will be fine. Though, if you do want to sling an 85mm 1.8 on the front and I wanted to stream this, it will not perform as well as some of the others on the market. But if you want to keep it simple and you'll keep your focus mainly fixed, this won't be an issue for you. Or if you only want a small amount of autofocus adjustments, this will perform just fine. If you do decide to use manual focus, there are a range of focusing tools that you can use. You can also use the app over Wi-Fi or via the USB-C port to monitor for manual focus, or tap to focus with compatible servo lenses, which is awesome.
So in the app, you can see the camera tracking me, as well as me touch focusing and using the arrows on the right hand side to adjust the position of my focus. If you haven't already, you should 100% go and join the Z CAM E2 Facebook group. There's a few thousand people on there now, and it's one of the best Facebook groups I'm a part of, and I'm part of quite a lot. So what makes it so great is Kinsoon, who's one of the head honchos over at Z CAM, is easily contactable and is constantly updating. Him and his team are constantly updating the Facebook group with what's coming in terms of new features to the Z CAMs, getting feedback and what things people would want in the cameras. It's insane. I've never seen a camera company like this. It's really refreshing to see a company engaging this much with their user base. And this is a new feature they just announced. So in Stream Converter, which we've already looked at, they will be adding touchscreen focus. So basically, I think what they mean from that is essentially you'll be able to click on your preview and focus. So you're going to get the same functionality that I just showed in the iPhone app on Stream Converter, which is awesome.
Let's have a look at image quality. To start with, you have 4 different image profiles in the camera: Rec 709, Z-Log 2, Flat, and HLG. Rec 709 is great if you want a good image straight out of the camera. Z-Log 2 is Z CAM's log profile for if you want to capture as much dynamic range as possible and then process it in post. If you're going to do this, I would advise downloading the Z CAM plugin for either Resolve or Premiere so you can properly process this footage. From my experience, the best way to process it is either grading the footage from scratch or converting it to RED log 3G10 and then using RED's standard IPP2 LUTs. Everything I've mentioned here will have links in the description for you to download and have a look at.
So for this example, I'm shooting in Z-Log 2 and I'm using false color to expose my color checker classic, and I'm making sure my mid gray is hitting green, which is where on the false color it should be sitting. And then my skin is sat between yellow and green, and that's where you want your skin to be sat roughly. When you're shooting in Z-Log 2, your exposure works a little bit differently to Rec 709. Z-Log is around 1/8 of the exposure when compared to 709, which is 3 stops less. So don't underexpose and make sure to test and refine your process to get used to this way of shooting.
You then have Flat, which is a lower contrast profile, and HLG, which is Hyperlog Gamma, which is a HDR delivery image profile. In regards to image quality, the E2 is awesome considering its price point, but I thought I'd do a few tests showing a few different qualities of its image. Let's have a look at high ISO. For these tests, I mounted the Z CAM onto my webcam multi-mount and then exposed for wide open on the lens. I then closed down the lens while cranking up the ISO. The camera holds detail pretty well up to 6400 ISO, where there is a decent amount of noise, but I'd say it's still usable. At 12,800, I would say it's getting to the point of being unusable. There is also a low noise mode, which is much cleaner, though does reduce overall dynamic range and detail. However, if the range in your scene is limited, I would say stick it into low noise 4K mode. ProRes has the most amount of detail in the image, and unsurprisingly, the low noise mode has the lowest amount of noise, but also has reduced detail like I said. I would suggest if you're using the camera for content creation to capture in ProRes 422 or HQ as close to 800 ISO as possible in normal 4K mode with sharpness turned to low. This way you have the cleanest image with the least amount of in-camera processing, so now in post you can add denoising and sharpening.
So as well as ISO tests, I also managed to do some under and overexposure tests. So for this I shot in Z-Log 2. I exposed for the color checker classic, which you can see, and made sure my skin was sat in the right place as well using false color. I've also used the Z-Log color plugin to correct exposure. So in here I've used the exposure stops to compensate for exposure and bring everything back down, and then a little bit of tweaking and gamma adjust. But other than that, this is just a Rec 709 output. So in terms of underexposure, this camera doesn't enjoy to be underexposed. As you can see, as we go up to -1, -2, -3, you can really see the noise creeping in. -4 and -5. So I'd say -2 is somewhat usable. I think you'd need some noise reduction to help, but yeah, anything past that point is it's gone. In terms of overexposure, it's actually pretty good. So this is 0, and then +1, +2, +3, +4, and +5. At +4, you can see it starting to go where you clip in detail my skin, but otherwise you've got a lot of information in the chart still. You can see it clipping a bit there, but yeah, +3, very, very usable in my skin. You can also see it clipping in the softbox as well. But yeah, +3, very good.
Lighting is the key for making your stream look good and your skin looking accurate, but I would really advise people to capture your scene in Z-Log 2. Bring it into Resolve, grade it from scratch, and get it to a point you like the look of, generate a lot from Resolve, and then import into OBS. However, if you can't be bothered to do that, then the internal Rec 709 is a decent option. Given the price point of this camera, I think it offers a lot in a really usable package. If you are looking to upgrade from a webcam like the C920, this is a really unique option if you don't want to shell out for a capture card on top of your new camera purchase. I also think this could be a very compelling camera choice if you want to stream with multiple cameras. This is because you can buy a handful of these, run them all into a switch, and then have a single Ethernet cable going from your computer to your switch, and boom, you can control and ingest all of your cameras at your different angles through OBS as you would normally. This was a very quick overview, so if you have any other questions about the Z CAM E2 series of cameras, let us know, as we will be releasing our in-depth E2 flagship review very soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.